Go ahead.
Okay.
So I think of this in several different layers. You know, obviously we've got programming, which, you know, the PCC has beautiful programming and accountable programming and deep history in programming and a culture that I trust and you know, all the things that I don't even feel like I need to talk about that as much as what are you thinking around affiliate higher learning? You know, what are those, oh, you know, I go to, wouldn't it be awesome if Addison County could be a seat of a lab school that partnered with CCV, with UVM, with Castleton, with Middlebury, with St. Mike's, and providing a place-based opportunity for ECE, you know, ECE professionals to really launch their careers. That model I would love to dig into, rather than being the UVM lab school or the Castleton lab school. I would love it to be the lab school that has relationships all across our higher ed institutions. That's super intriguing to me. And I don't know, you know, do all the higher ed people go, oh, are you kidding me? That seems impossible. And then I would go further into that, knowing and loving the PCC as a program director of equally high quality, although different. I would love to be there for there to be partners within the context of the lab school as well. So we have budding professionals in ECE who can have an opportunity to really dig into therapeutic childcare and birth to 3, or they can do nature-based programming with another program, or they can do, you know, that we would have a menu of sorts, just like there would be the menu with our higher learning. Not to, I don't know, whatever. Those are my 2 big grandiose thoughts. Ha.
Thanks.
I have a thought that I would like to contribute. One of the things that would be important, I think, for young people who are looking to perhaps enter the field and balance further education and professional development at the same time, I would love to see built-in supports for that continuum. That from working with students for a number of years and understanding that some of them may have more support than others to kind of find their way with some of those pieces. I think it can be a deal breaker for some students if they don't have the guidance. So that's one thing that I would like to contribute.
Well, and almost, you know, I go back, Donna, to that model that we had for so many years around the council, where programs had that support model, and it would be awesome to think of creating some sort of possibility for students to have that kind of mentoring and supports that's not just within the context of even one program, one mentor. It could be a bigger context than that.
Just so people know too, what Sue's talking about is we had an early childhood council that sort of predated
BBF,
really anyone else's, and BBF and others that are not building bright futures, and I think we did it for a while and then it all sort of got dropped. But it was about having the community partners be able to get together, so early childhood programs and anyone serving young families to get together once a month. And it was actually built into our state funding to have peer and community support. So when we had to do our, you know, so we took turns throughout the year and actually posed sort of, here's what our program is doing, here's some challenges, you know, here's what's going well. And we would together as a community try to, you know, lift all boats. So just so you know, that was the structure. It got changed, but
Thanks,
now,
Donna.
yeah.
Well, yeah, what that was an Addison County driven bar that we held each other to and with. And when some of the state funding started becoming attached to statewide agenda, and so the more regional agenda became more burdensome. We just couldn't do it all, and maintaining funding becomes the thing you got to do, and you got to check the boxes off. Anyways, that's a little bit of a rabbit hole, but
So,
I like the idea of what you're talking about, Ulti.
And
Just that support concept.
And Donna, maybe you can just repeat the question for Lauren, because I think that Lauren.
Oh, I posed it in the chat.
Oh, you did. Excellent. So Lauren's seen it. Brilliant. You're
Well, I
one
don't
step
know.
ahead of me.
Hi.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
I'm sorry. Hi, all. I
Hello,
didn't
Lauren.
see a question in the chat. I'm just trying to listen and catch up and not be, too intrusive like I am being right now. But
It
I'm
was
trying
just-
to catch up by content.
It's a really broad question and on purpose, but it was to pose a question of what would you want to see, from your perspective in a lab school.
Ah, okay.
and Donna, I've been thinking about this and I wanted to participate because sort of to Ultima's comments and Sue's both, I'm interested in thinking about that cadre of mentors and how do you really build mentor skills in a community of practice. And so to Sue's point, where it would be so cool if the PCC sort of networked across the institutes of higher education to be able to offer placements for a variety of field experiences. I wonder what would it look like if there were some support systems, maybe not only just, maybe not just for the young teachers themselves, but then for the mentors as well. And so I was bringing to the table just the perspective of teach, and that, one of the questions I have about any lab school anywhere is how might we be able to bust down those sort of barriers and those really narrow, how can we broaden the collaboration, I guess is just sort of the bottom line, and what could we each contribute to make a really robust system for building both mentors and placements for any sort of practicum, and how might Addison County Parent-Child Center be our sort of pilot guiding light opportunity. So those are some of the things I was thinking about. And I didn't finish by saying that through Teach, we have the ability to offer things like mentor training and communities of practice. And so that could be something we could offer to a collaboration if that were of interest. So.
Great.
Yeah, there's so much expertise. I know you did this with a lot of calculation and intent, but there's a lot of expertise in our salon this evening that brings a real depth. I love that idea that we've got something in place that could be massaged to support a bigger, not a bigger vision, but a slightly massaged vision.
I'd love to comment on this, because I think that even pre-COVID, we knew that the social emotional well-being of everybody was the most important thing in our field. And I think post-COVID and during, it's going to continue to be even more important. And one thing that, I'm a newcomer to Vermont, and I'm a newcomer to the Parent-Child Center. But one thing that has really struck me about the kind of support that is given there, it's not just supervision, it really is the emotional support, and it really is collaborative, and there's peer-to-peer support, and there's also mentor participant support. And I think that for me is the nutshell and the nub of why the participants continue to do so well on the program and make the kind of progress that they do. And I do think that with the therapeutic model, which really is a philosophy that runs at every single level, I think that mentor thing that feels like it can be missing at times in our practice could be very well covered by the model. Anyway, back to the salon, back to the group.
Well, and Catherine, you know, just to speak from, sorry to keep having thoughts, but the idea that that therapeutic model running across all the levels of people participating in programs, that even a kid, a young teacher in a different program because of an interest, you know, I want outdoor programming or I want X, Y, or Z, with the therapeutic approach around employment and around creating your own practice as an ECE professional, it bodes well for the program that they're placed in if it's not the parent-child center. And it bodes well for the mentors within the context of the other programs, developing the culture and the language and the vernacular around therapeutic practice. Does that make sense, Donna? I'm sure that resonates with you, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Hi, Reva.
Hi, Reva.
So sorry I'm late, you guys. I had another engagement. Nice to see you all.
Lovely to see you.
Do you know everyone?
Mostly everyone.
Does anybody not know Reva?
Reva, I have not met you personally. Oh,
No, I was just thinking, I think you're a person I don't know, and I'm not sure if I know Lauren.
okay. I am Ultima Danforth. I'm the Human Services Instructor at PAHCC here in Middlebury. And my program is on the same campus as the satellite program, the Play Lab of the Addison County Parent-Child Center. Yes.
So Reva, they're the human services program we were just talking to you about that we work together with the high school students.
I have a cat who's addicted
Cats
to
at the
Zoom.
salon.
Thank you.
Every Zoom he has to come.
And Lauren?
Yeah, I'm Lauren McKillop, and I coordinate the early childhood program at the University of Vermont.
Oh, fun. Hi, Lauren. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, you know, we have sort of many people in the kitchen around placements, and so I don't directly, you know, establish the field placements for our students, but we all work closely together, and I'm trying to learn the lay of the land and really think about new partnerships, particularly with the loss of the campus children's school. We have a whole new world to tap into and figure out, you know, how to, you know, create really, you know, engaging and supportive and meaningful placements for students. And we were just actually meeting today. There's like all sorts of logistical barriers, like around how our students are scheduled for these things. They might have a class right after, so they don't even necessarily have the capacity to travel very far. But so, you know, there's so many little pieces to this that we're trying to think through, both in the very sort of boring practical layer, but then also, you know, just in terms of what the dream would look like. And we were actually starting to draft a letter today to put forth just a general call to community partners just to see who would be interested in taking students, and sort of to write a series of, you know, dream qualifications around really more so dispositions and interests, you know, on the part of potential mentors around engaging in this work with adolescent pre-service teachers. I mean, it's an interesting role, and it's really not for everyone. I think the place where I got kind of stuck, and I'm sort of interested in people's experiences or point of view about this, is the potential tension between wanting to support community partners and thinking about how to mentor so they feel competent and prepared for the role, but to do so in a way that's mutually partnering and mutually empowering, and not in a way that says like, we're the expert here to tell you how to do your job, and wondering about how to build like sort of the PD rapport side of it in a way that feels supportive. And just, I'm sort of rambling out of sequence here, but another issue that's come up is just thinking about how to pull in really seasoned teachers who might not be licensed, who really bring sort of a huge breadth of expertise to feel confident to be in the role, because I believe at the practicum level, our students can be placed with mentors that are not currently licensed. However, they need to be with somebody who's licensed for the student teaching, I believe is, if I have it right, what the requirements are. But I have been given feedback in the past in other roles I've served that some really wonderful teachers have not wanted to serve as a mentor because they worry that the students might know more than them in the bookish way, even though their practice is so deep and rich, and just all of that stuff that we haven't as an institution had to really chew on because we had a lab school. And so I feel like a real kind of rookie starting in this field anew with the community and having a ton to learn and feeling very humbled. So that's all I have to share for now.
I love that you use the words dream and dispositions related to the whole conversation.
Okay, and I love your cat. So lots of love.
I love him too. It's just he does get distracting.
Yeah.
Lauren, that perspective is really beautiful, I feel like, because it really gives anybody who is wanting to work and develop and collaborate really a sense that you're open, that you're a beginner in this too. We're all beginning again. And I think those of us in Addison County are psyched because we feel like there's an opportunity here because, we don't have we have CCV. I don't know if CCV, I feel like Middlebury is CCV. I know CCV is all over the state, but, we have a couple of institutions of higher learning, but we haven't ever really had the opportunity to dial in around ECE development, professional development. Yeah. Per se, human beings getting certified. It's awesome to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the idea of a continuum of experience for aspiring students, right? So from that career and technical center student who's really thinking about the field and an array of experiences that student might be looking for, to our associate degree students at CCV who do a pretty limited field experience at the associate degree level. And yet, if it was more uniform with our partner schools, perhaps would transfer as practicum credit when they moved on. Like often that field experience just transfers as an elective, but if we could make it more standard and understood what happened at this level, it might be easier to transfer to UVM or transfer to Castleton for those early experiences.
And I wanted to jump in here because, Diane, I think we worked together a year or so ago with Katie Shepard and developed an addendum of sort of some aspects to integrate into one of the professional experiences at CCV. And if so, we could count it as a practicum on our side. But I know we still have work to do to operationalize this very sketched out dream that has not really, been a lived experience yet. But
right, and I've often like I'm not sure how that's going to work in the boots on the ground with the teachers, but I think this might help that process.
Yeah.
One of the other things I was thinking about too is, we do have folks obviously working in these centers who are aspiring perhaps to take college level courses. So how can we as higher ed through these institutions perhaps be more visible to the folks who are already working in centers who may be curious about what would it be like to take a CCB course? What would it be like to go to Castleton or UVM, and sort of that shared experience there.
Any of you, I'm interested in, Lauren, what you said, and I guess I should mention that I'm representing tonight Lamoille Family Center, which is another parent-child center, very interested in replicating the therapeutic child care that Addison County has in Lamoille County. and also interested in the lab school conversation around the schools up in and students up in that area. So that's sort of like why I'm here tonight. But I'm curious, I love what you said, Lauren, about do people have the dispositions? Because I think dispositions was something that way back in the day when I was coming through early childhood, we talked a lot about. Did people have dispositions for working with young children? And I think there's a set of dispositions for working with emerging professionals as well. So I'm curious, I mean, I'll tell you, my dream is that early childhood develops a professional framework in which mentoring is a part of every program, built into the program. Because I think that's how people learn in early childhood. I think they learn on the job. They need what they learn in the classroom, because you need that knowledge. But then when you step in and you meet a bunch of babies or 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds, suddenly all of that stuff, until you get comfortable, it, you know, sort of like is hard.
Yeah.
So like, I know for myself, I was so fortunate to have a really master teacher as my boss when I came into the field, and someone to talk to. And I had great practicums, I did great preparation, but it was really, I don't think I would have become the teacher I became without that presence in my life and in our program at the time. So that, I'm curious if any of you are preparing people for that role of mentors, because I think that really is an important and key role. And I'm curious if anybody's doing that work. And I think that's a cool part of this dream too, is how do we prepare people who have, you know, the skills with young children to share those skills with developing professionals in a way that isn't, you know, too domineering or, you know, that isn't like, you're doing this wrong, do it this way. That is more like, how do you get them to develop those really deep skills like scaffolding children's thinking and asking deep questions and observing children and having that influence you. That I think is a really, I think that's a need in the field. And these kind of relationships could feed that need.
Yes.
I think
So
one of the
Rita-
hardest, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think one of the hardest parts of, you know, implementing really sort of a mutually rewarding mentor relationship, in my experience in the field, has been trying to figure out time to dialogue. And I think making sure that there was the opportunity to exchange feedback and reflect aloud and to co-plan and to chew on juicy dilemmas in tandem was the hardest part. So like in, you know, at the lab school, we were fortunate enough that we built that into the schedule, because it was assumed that those teachers would have students each and every semester. It was part of their identity being hired into that role. So no one applied for a job at the campus children's school unless you were interested in being a mentor of adult learners and a teacher of young children. It was a two-pronged opportunity. And so because of that understanding from the, you know, at the gates, you know, first of all, we had buy-in, but we also, you know, we had sort of a schedule that was built around the identity of the teacher as a mentor to adult learners. So we sort of figured out and prioritized some time to work together for shared planning and reflection. And so, but I would say the most sort of profound aha, I think, that we had working with teachers over the years was that that teachers benefited from noticing their own competence in being able to serve the young professional, because a lot of the skills that made them a great teacher of young children were absolutely transferable, but it wasn't so obvious. So the thing about narrating a child's play sat at the core of what was an effective practice around mentoring, because those teachers ended up realizing that when they narrated the whys and hows of their practice, they made their teacher thinking visible in the moment, even if it was awkward, the way it is when you narrate a baby's, experience, checking out a ball for the first time. That teacher was like, oh, that's how you think and talk like a teacher. I get it. It was the thinking out loud. It was really became the biggest key. And that it really was about seeing the adult learner as a constructivist learner, just like the child, that you learn by making mistakes. So it has to be a mistake safe environment for the adult learner. They have to be able to try and screw up and be like, oh, whoops, like that didn't work so well, like, but that's okay, nobody got hurt, I'm going to do it this way next time because of these reasons. And so that constructivist safe space had to be transferred to the adult. And I think that was another piece around disposition that was tricky, because I think there was a sense from mentors with an adult support person coming in that they were just going to make their life easier, but it wasn't always that way. And so often the student would get way better. So by the end of the semester, they really were like an asset to the classroom, but in the beginning, maybe not so much. But anyway, those are just some thoughts that came up when you were sharing that. But that, I would say, was the hardest piece, is figuring out how to give the mentor teacher the opportunity to really share their thinking, co-plan, and exchange feedback, that I think is like a logistical thing that is so worth its investment. Because that action of reflecting out loud was such a source of professional development and accountability on the part of the teacher, that make teachers so better at their work, because you think you have to make sense. You have to be intentional. You have somebody who's looking to you to learn, why are you doing that? So it makes you do your best work. It's really quite powerful. I mean, I came to UVM myself in 1996 as a brand new, just licensed early educator, and I wanted to be in a lab school. So I came as the preschool teacher for 11 years. I was a classroom teacher and mentored students, and I just loved it. I mean, that was why I ended up here.
I'd love to comment on that very quickly, and then I want to bring Rick in. But I absolutely love that idea of when you employ somebody, that willingness to be a mentor for young adults as well as working with young children. I think that's very profound, actually. And then the support that we end up giving. And we see that in practice every day at the Parent-Child Center, because there's parallel learning with the parents and the young children, and the practitioner is the bridge between that. But I love that idea of being very overt about it, very transparent about what you're trying to do, bringing it to the surface rather than theorizing and knowing that's what you're doing, but having the language to do it. I've had an aha moment, thank you. But Rick, I'd love to bring you in. And you give us your freshest thinking on where this conversation is going.
So thanks, and boy, there's a lot going on here in this conversation. I love it. First and foremost, I need to say that in the last two times, Catherine, that you described your glass of wine, your adjectives were tiny and little. I'm a little skeptical now about how tiny and how little. All right.
I'm making it last,
All
because
right.
I feel like I'm mediating. I don't want to start slurring before the end of the evening.
So I guess the first thing I would say is that I really appreciated the reading that you submitted first. I got a chance to take a look through it, and it helped this conversation as well. It kind of helped proactively to be ready for it. And the one thing that sort of struck me about the initial part of the reading was the sort of focus on education, training, and research. That was in italics. It was italicized, and it was prioritized in the writing. And it struck me that that's what we do in higher ed. That the sort of three-legged stool of retention, promotion, and tenure is what do you teach, what's your service, and what's your research look like. So I think we're poised to be partnering in that way as well. So looking at those possibilities of what does best practice look like in the centers. A person who you may know up in the Middlebury area, Casey O'Meara, used to be a teacher up at the high school.
Yeah.
He is now the director of curriculum down here in the Slate Valley School District, and essentially he's over at Fairhaven. And he called me and he asked me if I would be willing to come over and talk with him along with our provost, one of our associate deans, and our dean of enrollment. He had some sort of grandiose ideas about a sort of a partnership, a symbiotic partnership with Castleton. He was looking to expand beyond the typical, what does Castleton do for Fairhaven? What does Fairhaven do for Castleton? And he wanted to start looking more at some research and some really ways in which Castleton could provide more professional development opportunities for his teachers beyond the 3 credit courses that we offer and beyond the mentorships that they provide in their schools for student teachers and practicum folks. And it was a really powerful conversation. Casey's a big picture thinker anyways, way up 40,000 feet. But he wants to look at some implementation work he's doing in the district from a research lens. And he's really looking, what are we doing, proficiencies and personalization and all that. So I find that fascinating, and I think it would find it fascinating with Addison County as well. The other thing I wanted to say up front was, help me if this is possible, but I believe it might have been Ann Wallace. Was she connected with you guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of
She
the
had a lifelong career at the Parent-Child Center. And
that's right. Well, one of the first institutes, our early childhood institute, we had our former president was giving a presentation about this fantastic place she saw down in Miami. She had flown down and seen this fantastic early childhood center down in Miami. She wanted me to go down and take a look at it. She wanted our department chair to go down, take a look at it. So she bragged for about 15 minutes during her presentation at our institute. And at the end of it, Ann came up to the president and said, let me save you a little airfare. She said, we've got a center up in Addison County that we're really proud of. She had a brochure and she had a booklet that she gave to her. But she was right. I mean, there are some really, really fantastic things happening up there. So let me just sort of tell you just in a couple of minutes, I won't take a lot of time, but as you guys know, we were poised to open a center here at Castleton, and then all hell broke loose, and the VSC sort of put the kibosh on us being able to move forward with that. In the meantime, we had procured 3 different grants. We had a Bowes Trust grant from the Rutland Hospital, we had a Let's Grow Kids grant, and we had a community trust grant, all capacity grants, ways in which we could build new slots and centers for early childhood. And once our program went away, so did that idea. And so we have been in conversations with Bowes and Let's Grow Kids to repurpose that funding. We're not going to have a center on campus. But what the department is starting to look at right now is creating a Castleton hub for collaboration with folks like Rutland Mental Health and the Rutland County Parent-Child Center and the Rutland Hospital Community Care Network, all of those folks. But they also have mentioned your group as well. And so what I see as a possibility is, Castleton wants as many spokes in the wheel as possible. And we absolutely see 35 miles north of us, a center that could be very symbiotic in ways in which we could benefit from the expertise up there. And then I think the centers could benefit from not only having our students there, but also our faculty there. We just hired a brand new early childhood professor for our early childhood program as well. So I've been trying to do some listening more than anything else, just to get a sense for where you folks are looking to go. But I also wanted to kind of let you know that we absolutely would love to partner with you guys symbiotically with the university, but there is some conversation about repurposing money for us to create some sort of a hub as well. I know that Let's Grow Kids folks have been saying that they've been looking to do a hub in Rutland for years, decades. And so that's kind of the plan at Castleton as well. And I guess that's all I have to say about that at this point.
But it doesn't have to be an and or by the sounds of it, Rick. Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds interesting.
May I jump in here? So, from my humble perspective as someone who has had her program just adjacent to the Play Lab for the last several years, I want to circle back to some of your ideas, Lauren, regarding the importance of the mentorship. And one of the most characteristic pieces of the Addison County Parent-Child Center experience for my students is the quality of the mentorship and how naturally this comes for the teachers. When my program was right next door, I would often just refer to what's going on in the Play Lab as background music. And we would talk about what students are hearing, or if we were seeing or actively involved, what do you see, what do you hear, what do you experience? And what do you not see, what do you not hear? And they're incredibly valuable discussions amongst young people who are formulating ideas about what does best practice look like. And for those students who have done some volunteering at the center, where there's perhaps a little more engagement with families from time to time, that value added piece is just so rich. I just feel like everyone should have it, and we're talking about a highly qualified staff, and just the quality of the mentorship is superb.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm curious to just sort of follow up on that, because I have no doubt about that. But to Lauren's point, about the lab school there, it was just an understood component of those lead teachers who are in their lab school that they were also going to mentor, new to the profession students, or and so. Again, I'm sort of thinking of this from, and I think Riva talked about this a little bit too, like what type of supports would the Parent-Child Center need or find useful in supporting the mentors to take on this additional role, because this is an additional role. So what type of supports, again, this goes back to my thinking about collaboration and how could teach, is there a scholarship model we could develop that would support mentor teachers with high, graduate level coursework and a stipend to be a mentor? Is there, and then, then how do we work with the institutes of higher education to be able to access that, those classes? So it's that kind of thing. So I'm trying to think of ways too that, or the supports that the Parent-Child Center, because you have so much going on that's amazing in terms of being a lab school in sort of the right place for this. But this would be additional work. So what would you need to do this, Donna, for you and your staff? What type of supports might you need, and is there a way for others to help you?
Right. Thank you. I think it's, and I just want to first thank you all, because it's amazing. This has been running around in my brain for a very long time. And, Catherine and I talked a lot, and we talked to our board, and, it's all sort of internal. And, I've talked a little bit to others here, about this, but I think I actually am feeling this sense of relief in talking to all of you. That's funny, like excitement in the idea to build, but also this like, oh yeah, this is not just us. So
we're safe. We're safe here.
It's good. And I think it again models, I think, what I always want to promote in the professionalism of early childhood and other fields. So for us, I think the historic piece of us being mentors to parents. So when a child care person educator, teacher, whatever, is hired, they are, a teacher / parent educator already. So there's already, like in the lab school at UVM, there's a built-in component where there's an expectation of mentoring. And while we spend a lot of time making sure we have people qualified to, either, teach in terms of, and be mentors and guide interns, not just for early childhood, but also for early intervention and early special ed work. For we've had interns there, we've had interns like through UVM, we've had interns through the MSW program regularly, and those are key pieces of our work and the work we do. I get that it's more work, and yes, we would need to figure out ways to formally support this whole, because it's big, but I think it's also, I think the way we do our work. So we are always mentoring. I just did a new staff orientation thing, and I said, the one thing is whether we're here or not here, which is why, right now wear a mask in the supermarket too, because we are mentors all the time. People are looking to us, our families are looking to us. And so that's part of our role. And that's in life. It's, yeah, we have a day job, but it's also in life. So, and I think to be able to build on the type of supervision we do, which is to make sure, again, we have full day, full care programming, and yet, many of our kids go home. We have a van schedule. We are not for working parents, for a training program. So as a result, what happens is, we have time, staff have time during their day to be doing some of the work around supervision, meetings, meeting with co-teachers, things like that. We also, while we do it, in our STARS application and wherever we need to, we show the sort of hierarchy of teachers, but we do not operate that way. We operate as a flat structure. So our pay scales and things don't change with licensure and things like that because of what, Lauren, I think you said it earlier, but there are these teachers that are like, would be called an assistant teacher or a helper in a classroom who are amazing, right? So we honor that. And yet we also know that, to be able to train and do that, we need to have people who have those degrees and have the knowledge and background. And I think as a result of that, and as a result of working with many families who have lived, in generational poverty and saying, you know what, when they say to us, well, you're a powerful person, kind of in the community kind of thing. I'm like, you are the most powerful person in the world to your child. And that is where we start everything. So, it doesn't matter if what your job is or what your title is or who you are or what your last name is or anything like that. This is really an inside job. And I think, that's our book, our therapeutic childcare book, is really based on these, what are the skills and knowledge, what are those attributes that we need to have as teachers, so that talking out loud, sort of, choreographing our play really, and saying it so that kids, we are forever before they're verbal saying, oh, it looks like you're feeling frustrated. Those simple things, but they add up, right, over time, as we all know. So to sit here and hear all these things, it's exciting to me to think about a model, because what I'm hearing people saying too is it's less of a place. So yes, we need childcare. Yes, we want to provide the space for students and young children to learn and grow and do well, and our staff to grow and be able to have opportunities. But it's also, to me now, like I'm less of a place than a process. So how do we help? And, Rick, I know you use the hub, not that we'd be a hub, but how can we be a hub in a sense? Like Sue, you talked about the Addison County. I think we have a lot of knowledge, pockets of knowledge all over. It's not just the parent-child center. And we've had, because we're not just a child care center, we have the ability and the need to work in different ways. So we've been able to do that over the years. But I think, how you do stuff is so much important than the outcome, right? Because it's what we have control over. So I think, yes, we'd have to figure out, so I sat here, I'm like, oh my goodness, now I'm gonna have to get a PhD because, I got so excited sitting here thinking about how do you link all these things together and provide that, on the ground work, like on, boots on the ground, right? That training at every level. And we have it. We have it at parents who don't have high school. We have it at the high school level with the human services program. We have it, you know, sporadically with student interns. So how could we formalize that? And how can we bring in the Quarry Hill School? Because that's a model that should be really looked at, the nature-based stuff, that, you know, all those, like, how do we do that? And to be able to do it across the state, because, you know, some students are closer to higher ed than others. So that's the challenge in Vermont, I think. But to make sure that, you know, I mean, for me, it's our philosophy and the way we do our work. It makes, you know, is important, and I think it works. So so then there's the research part, you know. So I just see all of this like coming together without, you know, of course I was like designing a building, and I still will in my head, and I will hopefully, you know, like to think about more childcare space, because we know that's a huge need for Vermonters. But to be able to really think about this in terms of just like good experience and how to support that. I don't have the detailed answers today, Cynthia, for you, but I think that's exactly it. Like, how do you build that, promote that? And, you know, I feel both ways about like paying a stipend to somebody seeing an intern. I think that's a good idea. And it's also a value added for a whole community. So how do you get community buy-in if one person's getting paid and another one's not, kind of thing. But those are the things. But there are, I mean, all of us, and one of the other things that I think, when you have our staff is very highly educated in comparison to other childcare programs, and we have a lot of longevity. And so I think about, you know, how do you really help promote the folks who have been in the field for a while to stay in the field. You know, I think that the state has done a great job in recent years of like getting ready to go into childcare stuff. And some colleges have those programs, and, you know, and some don't. But how do we build that to really solidify and build this as a profession, you know?
And actually on that, what is really interesting, what I'm hearing, that one of the things that could end up making somebody's role more interesting and more enriching, and let's face it, more financially viable, is having the money available to, whether it's a stipend or something really more formalized, to become a mentor. It just adds another rich layer to the work that people are already doing. So, you know, you talk about all boats rising, but that could be a really interesting model to make sure that people stay with you. So for Sue, for instance, if she knows that she has somebody who's an expert and, you know, she's barely making a minimum wage, that idea of becoming a mentor, she has those qualifications, and you know, it's that pay it forward element. It's that as you become an elder and a grayer, we did a lot of this in South Africa, this kind of the concept of the elder, that you take someone under your wing, you mentor them, and if there's an added financial element to that might be one of the support systems that we may need, that might mean that there's less people leaving the profession ultimately. Anyway, that's just...
I'd love to just, oh, go ahead, Rick.
Just real quickly, but before I lose the train of thought. So when I first contemplated this conversation, I was thinking more of our undergraduate early childhood program that's just up and running. But I am actually hearing that there's also a place for the Castleton Center for Schools, the same entity that ran all the courses for the Institute. A couple of years ago, I went up and met with a principal and a superintendent up in the Northeast Kingdom, and they were struggling at that school with lots of new teachers that needed mentoring and coaching. And they had a number of veteran teachers who wanted to be those mentors and coaches, but they themselves didn't quite have the gist of what that might look like, and felt they needed some professional development themselves to be the mentor. So we developed 2 courses for them. The one course for the new teachers who are going to take the course on acclimating to the school and the expectations of a new teacher. And then the more seasoned folks, we're going to have a graduate course on implementing and overseeing mentorships and coaching in a school. And we helped them create both of those courses, so they had a say in what the content looked like, the flow of the coursework, when they started, when they ended, how much credit they were worth. And we also talked about putting 2 or 3 courses together for the more veteran teachers and allowing them to earn a certificate where it would say I earned, 16 credits of Castleton graduate coursework in mentoring and coaching new teachers. That allowed them to move along the salary scale a little bit and also allowed them to matriculate into our grad program with those credits as well. So just something to think about if you're looking for ways in which the center might be able to utilize professional development. You don't have to go looking in somebody's catalog to see if they have the course that you might need. You can create that course with us and then we can help support it with credit.
Well, and Rick, what I was going to say totally dovetails on that, because I was thinking of piggybacking on what Cynthia was saying about what Teach can offer as communities of practice. If we can get a cohort of mentors to work together about what being what is this experience of being a mentor all about, and what's a mentor at PCC versus what's a mentor at Quarry Hill versus what's a mentor anywhere else in a partnering program, then again, we've got another level where quality and professionalism and, up the ladder, up we go. And with that community of learning can come that credit. If we can get a community of learning that's equal to credit hours.
Yeah.
Which I think our model needs to go to in this crazy field where we work while we're working to attain our credential.
And I'm wondering.
I would love that.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, we started the cohort of Addison just as COVID hit, as we all know, the MABA program, right? And we've only done 1 course so far. I'm wondering whether this course, this idea of mentoring and coaching new teachers, might be the next MA or credit-based course that the cohort could end up doing to really get up and running on that. I mean, that's something, Donna, can be a side conversation, but I think that, Cheryl is sort of dabbling in what course next, and the whole, I think the whole idea of the cohort, sadly, sort of it has shifted, because the idea was originally that we were going to use the parent-child center as a physical space that we can all learn together. And that has, fallen away over COVID. But if those courses, if you're offering those courses and they are, there's an online element and a work alone and work collaborative, that might be a really interesting way to dovetail in. I don't know.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about too, I don't know if everybody does, but we were creating a master/bachelor's cohort, but I think, and that is the third, this would be the third incarnation of a cohort for that Addison County has created, Parent-Child Center. So there was one before my time. And then when I was taking getting my master's at UVM, that was my internship created the cohort that would then graduated 20 students, I think a couple of years later, but that of all early childhood folks. So, and that, again, I think, and that came out of a place of help. Like we need to really, we have teachers that, don't need to take, we need to take CPR every year, but we don't need to take, the fundamentals courses, but like we need to dig deeper. So we did do some course creation there. And I think that's absolutely a piece of this. I think you're right to think about this as a master's thing too, Rick. And that excites me as well, because, the first course was the therapeutic childcare. Ann Wallace taught it, but and co-taught. But I think that's that is a great way to think about it too, because I think engaging people in the field is really important. And I know that sometimes, the devil's in the detail, right? The sort of credits that transfer, and that's all your world more than mine. But I too like the idea of being able to partner with every school, so if it's Northern Vermont University in your area, Reva, and if it, Castleton and UVM and CCV, well, CCV is everywhere, right? So how to do that, and that's your expertise. But
so we have 20 minutes left, and I'd really like to use this well. And I think maybe let's go for freshest thoughts and throw that open, because we've discussed a lot. So I'd love just freshest thoughts of any of you.
So could I just like to sort of step back and I guess I still get in the role where I think about the things that are practical.
Good. We need that, Reva.
My new role. But I mean, some of that is the advantages for both the higher ed folks and for the child care programs are remarkable. And I think a word we keep hearing about, we know this is important in early childhood, but I think it's really important in this conversation, is intention. So it's not just that, as you guys in higher ed are looking for places to put your kids to prepare, it's not just a matter of saying, hey, here's a high quality program, can we put your kids here? It's a matter of saying, we actually design programs around the fact that that's going to happen. And I think what has been, unfortunately, the demise of many lab schools. I taught in a lab school, kindergarten, for 3 years, which was lovely. But what has been and I just heard they went under this year in the midst of COVID, and that was a pre-K through 6 school. But what has been the demise is that fortunately or unfortunately, they're paying college level salaries, right? So if you think about childcare paying college level salaries to all of their staff, that's hard,
That's
right?
attractive.
It's attractive, but what we've seen, it's unsustainable, because that's why many campus programs are closing. And the campuses can't afford to have them drain. So this idea of campuses needing to partner with private programs, to get a slice of real life, but that those programs are designed particularly around the same principles as lab schools. This issue of time to reflect that people have been talking about. Don and I were talking about that yesterday. It's a whole different scheduling mentality for childcare, which has sort of timed around, boy, like if you get that 15-minute break, I got to hire a floater to cover it, right? Like having a whole different idea about our time and look at the fact that you overstaff enough to take good care of the children and give people time to be reflective teachers. That's a mindset that these programs would have to have. And maybe even, Lauren, when you were talking about some of the challenges for students around participating in internships, I mean, my daughter went to a high school that was a sort of alternative high school, and she used to intern a couple of days a week as part of her education. Like she spent the whole day at her internships, right? And so just both sides could sort of think differently about how do we make this relationship work. But I mean, the advantages are the college gets these real life, high quality programs for their kids to come in and be prepared and learn and grow, and gets this, as Rick was saying, this rich place to do research if you want to gather data, do research, these strong relationships. And for the programs, you get access to like the higher ed people. You don't have to go get your PhD done. You just have to hang out with these guys. They all have them, right?
Yeah.
They have them.
Oh,
They know
good.
how to create CUs. They have highly qualified staff that can become the instructors for the content level. Like your people are going to be the instructors for the practicum level. Like it's a match made in heaven, but it has to be, I think, intentional. It can't be sort of casual, because then all of those things that I've been scribbling down that you said were components they needed have to be built into the programs on both the higher ed side and on the childcare side. And you got to think about a different mindset, which now's the time. Childcare is a little bit of hot wax right now because of this COVID experience. If we can build in, it's more than just paying people more. It's time to be a reflective teacher. It's building a mentor into your teaching team, so that the director isn't the director, the administrator, the mentor, the bus driver, the cook, right? Like, when I think of the European programs that employ pedagogistas whose entire job is the growth of the staff, right? Like that's something that we could borrow and develop, that could develop more in Vermont than anywhere else in the United States I could imagine. So.
And I'd just like to reflect a personal experience. I've had 3 different types of practicums over my career, and I've done a structure of a course that was, in the mornings we went and we worked within practice, and then every afternoon we had our lessons. That was when I was in London. And then so that was a half day. Then I did what was known as a day release. So we had one day in practice, and then the other day in theory. And then eventually, once we got more proficient, we then did 6-week blocks. So we did 6 weeks of deep theory, and then we would go and reflect for another 6 weeks. So I think it would be that we would all have to think carefully about maybe even the structure of the way the courses are being run. And all three have merits. So I just wanted to share that because I've done it in different places.
Got two. Give us the third, Catherine. I'm fascinated.
So say that again.
You gave us two.
Oh, did I? No, one was, I think, so one was a day release, and then 4 days of theory. Then there was a half day, mornings, in at school at 8 and then leave at 1. And then we would study from 2 until 5:30. And that was full day, like a whole year. And then we did 6-week blocks.
I got it.
So those were the three
those were
models.
different.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Who else? This is, yeah. Thank you.
Well, I was just going to say, not to bring it down to practical, but I think we need to think about who would help with the logistical pieces so that people can concentrate on doing that really rich mentoring work and reflection work, and they're not having to worry about so-and-so can't get off until 4 and can't be there till 6. So, our career and technical centers, they have internship coordinators. A lot of colleges also have internship and field placement coordinators. We sadly don't at CCV, but I think if we think about funding or big vision, having some sort of administration help to help people not have to worry about that piece and spend their time where they really want to be spending their time is just something to think about.
Important.
So funny too, because when I think about that internally, Diane, it's a really good point. And I think, and when I was hearing Riva say, you have to have enough staff too. And of course, I immediately, because we're in a deprivation model in terms of salary structures, go to, okay, yeah, we need to hire, but my head went to, I'll hire an additional outreach worker and childcare worker. So then that frees up, some caseload time to be able to give people time to mentor. But you're right, that administratively, there's also a need for, you need an infrastructure to do.
And how do we collectively, we don't swamp you out, right? You're getting people from CCV, from Center, from Castleton, from UVM,
yeah,
it has to be a way to sort of control the flow.
If we're going to dream, I feel like we have to move out of a scarcity mentality.
Yeah, we do.
I know. Mentality. If you're going to dream, you dream the model you want. If you have to carve out of, and I think, Diane, that point about just thinking about managing a whole lot of students and their schedules and if they can get there or not is right. That's going to be a job.
Right. And it's not really what the people who are mentoring want to do, right? They want to be,
because they're also teaching
work, but they don't want that nitty gritty.
That's a really important point. Again, I think if you want to dream that, I think one of the things that when I was young, we used to take great pride in an early childhood, and then we learned it wasn't, it was to our detriment, is that we could do amazing things for kids on a shoestring.
Yeah.
We have to stop thinking that way and start telling people what it actually costs to do this work, because it's important work. And if we don't do it and do it well, so.
Well, wait till you see my admin rate. No, just kidding.
No, but getting out of that, but you don't even have to throw in an admin. When you play out all the costs, it's just the truth, right? Of doing it and doing it well and making sure that it's well supported. So, my suggestion is, if you're going to dream, always dream big.
I would like to point out that if you think about high school, I cannot imagine that any teachers that work continually and have class every single hour of their day. There's always planning time, there's always reflection time, there's always admin time, there's always staff time. And that for me always feels that there's an unfairness, that there's a built-in model in high school. I think primary school is harder, K through 6, because often the children stay with that one teacher.
You know, they do it with specials, the music teacher, the gym teacher.
Okay,
the
there you
shop
are.
teacher.
So, and the fact that
I used to go with my kids to all those things.
there you
'cause
go.
I was crazy.
Because you like, yeah, exactly. But you know, it, and the fact that we in early ed think that that's a luxury, yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I'm loving this strengths-based, you know, dreaming big and expecting it, and not, you know, not thinking, oh well, we're early ed, so actually it's always been like this, you know. Anyway, we've got 7 more minutes.
So-
I have,
I'll
go ahead, LT.
Okay,
I'll be short and sweet.
go.
I just wanted to bring also the children and families back into the room, that they are so central. And, you know, as we talk about what is the right balance of providing these rich experiences for students, I know we know this, but I know that this is at the heart of what the Parent-Child Center does, and just put that out there, that this is an essential part of the equation. How do we do this gracefully in a way that honors and respects the important work that goes on there for everyone who's participating?
Absolutely. You know, I want to say thank you for that. And Sue, I know you want to say something, but really quickly, I feel like the multi-generational model is something that we have to offer, that I don't, and I think in the early childhood world, we're always, you know, because there's not many 2-year-olds hanging around without parents. So we, you know, really focus on that. So it's at least 2 generations, and often 3 with grandparents. And I think that's been an interesting thing for me to watch, as schools during this COVID period have really been trying to engage families in a different way, you know, and it's hard, you know, unless that's your core, it's hard to do. So I think that is absolutely something. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think what I was going to say sort of matches, because what I was going to say is the piece about placement, about the intentionality of placement, is that, you know, we get this admin person, or, you know, we get this higher level person who's going to help us organize the stuff, and we want to make sure that the person who's going to go, it can be invested in where they're headed. That this model that you have, that I'm going to go to, is exactly what I want, where actually I want to express myself that this other model is what I'm going to thrive in more effectively. Excuse me. And that's just part of what we need to build into all of it, so that kids, families, staffing can thrive most effectively.
Thank you, Sue.
last thoughts?
Yeah, last thoughts.
Well, I just thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Really, I really, this has been really helpful, and it has been recorded, so we'll go through it and make sure you can get that as well. And there were a couple of other people that couldn't make it today that wanted the recording, and I think this is the first step of many. So we will be in touch soon.
And I think there are several people on this call, Donna, that will be sitting in on the call on Monday morning. The professional group that we do, I know Sue and Lauren, and I think Diane's been on, Rick definitely, Ulti. So I think there'll be a nice little report back, because I think we'll be asked to report back on this. And for me, and Donna, I know it would be wonderful to, we'll all go away, we'll think about it. We have a weekend to, really think carefully about some of these conversations. And I've made a few notes, and we'll review it, and then reflect and come back as a group together again. Because I think there's an art of possibility here. I'm very excited, to have such great thinking on a Thursday night at 6 o'clock. Thank you. Donna, do you want to close?
I did. Thank you all. And please, if you have any thoughts and ideas, please let us know, I think we can actually
Really
maybe if we
engaging and
send a
fun.
group.
Thanks for
Sorry, go ahead.
sponsoring this.
Absolutely.
And I hope you'll come back to our next salon as well. Because I don't know about you, I quite like the 6 o'clock at night, you know.
Unless you zoomed all day, right, Diane?
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and we will be in touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Good night,
all.
everyone.
Good
Bye-bye,
night,
everyone.
everyone.
Okay, good night.